like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio, radio with bite.
Gibson's story had holes in it and changed under examination by prosecutors. There was no physical evidence of rape. However, under threat of being tried as an adult and facing a possible 41 years in prison, Banks was pressured by his attorney to plead no contest instead of fighting the charge. The attorney didn't even let him consult his mother before signing the deal, despite the fact that he was underage. Banks served over 5 years in prison, received a felony strike, and upon release was subjected to sex offense registration and other requirements associated with being on parole. He had served that time and was out on probation when Gibson contacted him, asking him to let bygones be bygones, then agreed to meet with him. It was at that meeting that he recorded her admission that she lied about being raped. Gibson's taped confession was enough to convince the Innocence Project to investigate the case, their first time ever taking on a case of someone already released from prison. Evidence presented by the Innocence Project was enough to convince L.A. County prosecutors and an L.A. County Superior Court judge that the conviction should be thrown out. Kaifan, you on?
Yeah, I'm on. And that's a great rundown of the Brian Banks case. We're not just talking about Brian Banks in this particular show. We're talking about all victims of false rape accusation. And I just wanted to point out something that I wrote up before the show. Our ideological opponents point out that using the word rape to refer to false rape accusations is expanding the term. What's amusing about the charge that we're watering down rape is that feminists are busy expanding what the word rape applies to with their term rape culture. Because of rape culture, rape now isn't just a crime that all people condemn, but some may still remain skeptical in any particular instance that it's actually occurred. Rape now exists on a continuum of social behavior totally unrelated to actual rape. Rape jokes, rating women's looks, the beauty ideal, all of these things get folded into the idea of rape using the term rape culture. Sometimes the only way to fight fire is with fire. If we can get false rape accusations seen as a form of rape, a social rape, then we bring balance to the discussion. We have to consider the needs of both types of rape victims, those who are raped physically and those who are raped socially. Now, to offer an argument that false rape accusations are social rape, we have to look at what makes rape a bad thing. It isn't the physical damage, which, according to studies, is often identical to whatever damage is sustained during consensual sex. In fact, we know what makes rape uniquely bad must not be physical damage because the average physical trauma of other crimes that are considered far less serious than rape is often far more significant. Beatings, broken bones, permanent disfiguration, these are common features of muggings, assaults, attempted murders, and they're all far more physically damaging than the average rape. What makes rape uniquely horrific is not the physical damage, which is eclipsed by other violent crime. What makes it uniquely horrific is the mental effects on the victim, the loss of trust, the disruption in their sexual life, and psychological damage. All of that damage is shared between victims of physical rape and victims of social rape. When you read the stories of false rape accusation victims, a common theme emerges. I'll defer to the words of J.P. Flathead, a commentator on Reddit, in describing the effects of a false rape accusation. Wait till you've been hit with the charge of false accusation of pretty much anything, and you'll find intense depression, social disapproval, post-traumatic stress syndrome, constant guilt and wondering if you did anything wrong or deserve it, distrust from others, distrust of others, your failure to thrive at work or in social relationships, feeling personal powerlessness, feeling robbed of control over your life, fear of knocks on the door or even emails, suicidal ideation. All of these symptoms are shared with physical rape victims, male and female. So if you're going to take a crime like rape and say that it's worse than any other crime, even though it is on average less physically damaging than other violent assaults, then to justify that, you have to rely on the psychological damage of rape, which applies equally to victims of physical rape and victims of social rape. And as for women having impunity to socially rape men, unless the criminal justice system gets involved, a woman can accuse a man of rape or other sexual crimes without any consequence. She can use her community against her victim by spreading rumors or even posting things online, as a recent woman did, accusing a man of being a pedophile. He's still dealing with the fallout in his life, loss of friends and job opportunities, and he likely will for the rest of his life. Social rape, it exists. All right, now that I've had the floor for that long, I'm going to invite my co-hosts, Karen Strawn and Della Burton, to respond.
Della?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead, Karen.
Honestly,
Karen on?
I do actually, this is one case where I think that actually using the term rape really qualifies. As far as feminists and their expansion of the definition of rape, like a lot of what they're trying to do now, I was reading about things like birth rape, where, an emergency cesarean section is now rape. It's now, if you don't take 10 minutes to comfort and reassure the mother about what's going to happen and get her consent, you're raping her. So the life-saving procedures that are undertaken by a doctor during childbirth are now considered rape among feminists. It's absurd, right? But they complain whenever anybody compares the psychological sequelae of false rape accusations to the psychological sequelae of rape. And those particular symptoms, those psychological symptoms, are virtually identical. So,
yeah. In many ways, they are identical.
I hadn't heard about calling emergency C-sections rape if they don't. That's crazy. If it had taken 10 minutes to reassure me when I had my emergency C-section, my son and I would both be dead.
Yeah, no, this is what was really insane, because there were some people that I was discussing this with online who I had previously thought were sensible women. And they said, oh, yeah, no, I would consider that rape. And I'm thinking, there's nothing dignified about giving birth. You do not get to keep your dignity. There will be multiple people you do not know sticking their hands up your junk, right?
Yeah.
It's all matter of fact. Nobody's got any nefarious intentions. They all have your best interests at heart, right? And if they have to make a spur-of-the-moment decision, they do.
Yeah, and it's of course, the concept of birth rape is just absolutely absurd, and we can expand the idea of rape to birth rape, but we can't expand the idea that actually charging someone with a false rape accusation with similar symptoms to rape, that could be considered a social rape. That could itself be considered a sexual assault. It's not identical because the physical component isn't there, but a lot of the same emotional and mental fallout is identical. One of the interesting things too, though, is that when you have been raped, it's once you've recovered physically, it's all psychological, right? Mm-hmm. But when you've been accused of rape, right, all of a sudden the door is open, like you really are looking over your shoulder, right? Because people are targeting you now. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
as a rape victim,
that.
You're in no greater danger than you were the day before. It's just another day. You're just more aware of the fact that you're vulnerable. You don't think that, realistically, there's nobody out to get you, right? But when you've been accused of rape, you really do have an actual real-life liability. right? You really are looking over your shoulder for a good reason, because there are people out there who are going to beat you up or worse.
Yeah.
And there was a story on Reddit a while back discussed at length, and I cannot remember the guy's name, but a young man that was murdered because he was falsely accused of rape. And the girl got a bunch of her friends together and tracked him down and beat him to death.
That was in the UK. Well, it wasn't even the girl. The girl had said that he had raped her, and it was her girlfriend, like her female friend, who decided to get everybody together to beat the crap out of this kid. He was 18 years old, and then the girl who had like sort of set the whole thing off by accusing him of rape was the one who brought it to the attention of the police out of guilt. I guess human being after all, but you know, she brought it to the attention of the cops that yes, it was my friends who did this, and I feel terribly, and you know, but like it's almost like young girls and women who make this accusation, they have no idea the repercussions of it.
Yeah,
like
no idea what it's set off.
Like I just can't even understand it, because if you're supposed to believe that rape is something that's like as bad as all living things in the universe ceasing to exist simultaneously, right? It's supposed to be like the worst thing ever, worse than death, worse than genocide, right?
Yeah.
And yet you're going to fling the accusation, and you're not going to have any kind of predictive ability to say, oh, my goodness, something horrible could happen from me saying this.
You know, look how often it happens. I mean, and how lightly it happens sometimes. And there are news stories of women using that accusation to get out of paying an $11 or $13 cab fare. And it's such a problem in some areas that cabbies have had to put cameras in their cars so that they can prove they can rape anybody.
Well, and the or they don't want to pay cab fare, and they know the police will give them a ride home, so they call 911 and report the rape, and then the police come and pick them up, and then they just have to spend 20 minutes giving a statement at the police station, and then they get a ride home.
Well, what I wanted to bring up actually is something else, something I noticed that sort of it's akin to all this, but isn't really about the society's response to somebody who's a presumptively innocent man who's been accused of rape, or vigilante justice, but the man's response, the man or boy's psychological response himself. Even in a situation where there isn't vigilante justice, there isn't the criminal court system, just being accused of rape seems to be a mind fuck of epic proportions for a lot of guys, for normal guys.
Because it's a horrible thing to be accused of. I mean, if it wasn't a horrible thing to be accused of, nobody would die at the end of a rope over an accusation of it. It's not like stealing a tube of mascara from the drugstore. You know, it's rape, right?
Yeah. But it's like not even taking out the criminal justice system and vigilante violence. Just a woman accusing a man of rape. Just completely contextless. They're just in a void. They're just in purgatory, and she accuses him of rape. Just that itself, without any other path, no other consequences. Just her saying you raped me is a mind fuck. It's almost like a violence.
Oh, it is, especially in a situation where there actually was a sexual encounter, and now he's got to doubt, how she felt about the encounter, and what really happened, and go back over it in his mind. Did I do something wrong? Was I a clod? What happened? And in that situation, I've actually seen some guys I know go through that, and where they start everything that they do, they start questioning, and it becomes this situation of self-doubt that's really all-encompassing.
Yeah, That's what I've seen when I've read firsthand accounts of men, even if they don't end up going through the meat grinder of the criminal justice court, even if they don't end up, getting beaten and their face cut open by a mob. Even if none of that extreme stuff ends up happening to them, just the accusation alone is damaging. It's psychologically impactful to the point where
basically the accusation is you have hurt another human being in the most cruel and horrible way possible, right? And
right.
Nobody wants to feel like they've done that. Like who wants to feel like they've damaged another person for life, right? That even if by accident, you don't want to feel like that.
Doesn't that make the feminist charge that men use rape to keep women in a state of constant fear through this rape culture? Doesn't it make it just hideous? He's a normal guy.
That is the ultimate false rape accusation. It really is.
It really is.
Yeah,
it's show
society-wide
nurture by protecting. Men have a way of nurturing by protecting. It's one of the things fathers do. It's one of the things husbands do, boyfriends do, brothers do. Men are protective. Men and boys are protective of their loved ones. To be told that they use a terrible assault that's supposed to be the worst thing you can do to keep their loved ones under control is just a completely heinous statement.
And you can't even say that it's confined to loved ones because as somebody who was a big fan of no strings attached sex, every time that I've been single, I have never once come across a man ever who has not been 100% concerned that I was getting something positive out of the interaction, right?
That's true too.
Other than that one assault when I was 14 and they were 16, right? But other than that, every single man that I have ever been even remotely intimate with has been super duper concerned that I wasn't doing something I wasn't ready for, that that I was okay with everything, that I was having a good time, that that everything, all of that, right? That I was enjoying myself, that I felt safe, everything.
Yeah, I can add to that. There was a study done on women's sexual experiences in the Sudan, I believe, and they practiced a really severe form of female genital mutilation called infibulation. And I don't know if people want me to describe it, but it's essentially I will have a trash bucket nearby for this one. They essentially scrape off all of the external genitalia of a woman, and then they sew her back together into a whole. And in this society, when a woman's going through her wedding night, there's a possibility she could bleed to death through the process of losing her virginity. And so that when they have this wedding ceremony, you have this bride and this groom, and it's supposed to be this exciting situation, you're getting married. And, of course, the bride doesn't know if she's going to live through her wedding night, and the groom doesn't know if he's going to end up killing her. And what's interesting is in this society where men are supposed to live up to this ideal, and it's specifically stated that they're supposed to be sort of cruel and cold and not caring, the women in this study almost universally reported that the men that they, their husbands, when they had that first night were, well, first of all, they were all scared to death, but were universally, in this society where men are supposed to be cruel, they were universally caring. They were universally caring about their pain and their pleasure, and they were universally kind. And this is in a society where you could conceivably say that they have a desire to control female sexuality, and they have a very specific idea of what men should be. And yet, normally, the guys were the exact opposite.
One of the interesting things, though, is that when you look at female genital mutilation in those parts of the world, men and women blame it on each other, right? Like, literally, you have mothers who will have this done to their daughters against the expressed wishes of their husbands. Their fathers are like, I don't want you to do this. I don't like the fact that this was done to you. I don't want you to do this to our daughter. And the mother will say, well, this is just what's done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's but in that situation, the men still are. It gives total lie to the idea of a patriarchal rape culture.
Oh God, it really does. I mean, if the father is saying, please don't do this to my daughter, and the mother is saying, she's going to be mutilated like I was, how is that a patriarchal culture? How is that a culture where the father's wishes trump all?
Yeah, but not just that, but how is that in that culture if the natural response of these men who are getting married to these women and they're expected that the sex act is supposed to be painful and they're not expected to care. I mean, something about the culture is the men are supposed to be really like the typical, prototypical feminist patriarchal overlord. That would be these men, the standard that these men are held to. And yet they're not like that. They're almost universally not like that.
Why would a man want his wife to not enjoy sex with him? Why would a man want his wife to fear him?
Well, why would any man? Like, I don't. Then that's what's awful about feminist rhetoric is it makes women distrust normal men. Normal men are not like that. They're not even like that in societies where they're expected to be like that. A normal guy doesn't want to rape, and in fact, a normal guy is traumatized by a woman saying, "You raped me,"
or "You hurt me."
Yeah, you are actually traumatizing this guy. Go ahead, Della.
Yeah, normal guy is appalled at the idea. I've mentioned a case before, the one that I wrote about on A Voice for Men as 7 Years in Hell. One of the accusations that the vexatious litigant in that case brought against her ex-husband, and this was, just to recap, this was a custody battle. And the ex-wife just started randomly flinging false accusations and taking out false restraining orders and all kinds of stuff. But at one point, she accused him of rape. And it was blatantly obvious that it was not true. She picked a time and a date when he could not have physically been where she said he was. There was physical proof he wasn't there. And the detective went after him anyway and actually allowed this woman to repeatedly change her story. But as this was going through, he was hauled into the police office, let's see, if I recall correctly, 3 times on that accusation. And each time that he went in there, it wasn't just a matter of being flabbergasted that he was being accused or upset that he was, this was being, he was having to go in there again, that he might sit in jail again, or that anybody might think it. He was flat out horrified that somebody would say this about him. Yeah. And personally knowing the guy, this is a guy, he's an incredibly gentle person. And it's just not him to attack people. And I mean, he'll defend himself in an argument. He'll tell you off if you're an asshole. But this is not somebody who has even an aggressive attitude as a person. He just wants to be himself. And that's kind of my definition of a normal guy. He just wants to live his life and do his thing and be himself and not have anybody inflict drama on him. Yeah. And that was this guy's situation. But he was just absolutely horrified that even a complete stranger whose job it was to believe the accuser might for a minute think that he would commit rape.
Yeah. And that's really what I'm trying to get at with proposing this idea of the social rape, is that the accusation just if you look at the accusation itself, the accusation is a form of sexual violence against the person.
Well, it's definitely a form of violence, and there is a definite sexual undercurrent to it. Like I said, a false accusation, nobody would make a false accusation of shoplifting a tube of mascara. Nobody would do that. There's no power in it. There's no power behind that accusation. There's no ability to inflict a wound behind that accusation.
They don't get anything out of it.
Right? Like, oh my goodness, you stole a tube of mascara. Right? I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to call 911 right now. Like, nobody would care. Nobody would freaking care. But the moment that it's about rape, and, like, honestly, you could falsely accuse someone of murder, and there would be less of a stigma.
Yep. That's very true.
Yeah.
I mean, murder, like I was saying, murder, muggings, all of these crimes cause more physical damage on average than rape does, and yet they are considered less significant than rape. So the only possible justification is the psychological effect of rape, and when you look at false accusations, you definitely see that same kind of psychological effect.
Well, and this would be why. This would be why, if false accusations of rape constitute a higher percentage of all accusations than of other crimes, this would be the reason why. It's because they're so effective. Just like false accusations of misogyny and false accusations of anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or racism or whatever horrible crime is the fashionable horrible crime of the day, right? That everybody looks down on, right? Like rape has been consistently viewed as a unique social evil. Right? Like literally you can have an entire movie where a man, what was the one, Payback with Mel Gibson, where all he does is kill guys for revenge, and he's the hero. Right? But if he raped women for revenge, would he be the hero?
No.
No.
Yeah, no.
Actually, there's another one with Nicolas Cage movie, 8mm, that is even more, and it's the same thing. That one, if I recall correctly, was about a film, but it's revenge. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's killing people out of revenge to avenge a rape murder, right? And he goes off and he kills a whole bunch of people, right? And that's excellent. That's wonderful, right? He's a hero, right? But, you know, you can kill any number of people, right, out of revenge if it's justified, if there's some real justification for it. There's no justification to rape anyone.
Yeah, unless they're in prison. So with that, I'm gonna ask people if they want to call in. If you are a victim of a false rape accusation, or you have a story about it, or you just want to yell at us for using the term social rapist, you can call in if you don't agree with us, by the way. The call-in number is 310-388-9709. That's 310-388-9709. Right now I'm going to cue up a little snippet that Diana recorded for us to play on the show. It's on false accusations and why we shouldn't necessarily believe that she didn't lie.
When the topic of false accusations of rape arises, the feminist reaction is to silence the subject with claims of victim blaming or rape apology. Aside from assuming guilt instead of innocence, which bypasses an essential aspect of the justice system, it stands as an hysterical reaction to legitimate reasons to vigorously question an accuser. Feminists assume or project motives onto people who think a woman should be questioned when making an accusation of sexual assault. It's not complicated. When a person is accused of a crime that places their liberty in jeopardy, they deserve the right to a proper investigation and a fair trial. Though some women might make false allegations maliciously, other women may simply be in a state of confusion. False memories are a studied phenomenon. Barbara Hewson, a barrister in the UK, outlined some experiments in the matter in a November 11th article on Spiked.com called Believe the Victim, A Recipe for Injustice. She describes a 1996 Dutch study that found after an aircraft crashed into an apartment building and the media falsely reported that videos of the crash were made, over half of those interviewed later on claimed to have seen the non-existent video material, and some proceeded to give details of what happened when the plane hit the building. In 2013, 249 soldiers returning from Afghanistan were subtly asked if they remembered a New Year's Eve missile attack that had ended harmlessly. This missile attack had never happened, so none recalled it, until 7 months later. When questioned again, 26% of those soldiers believed that this missile attack had happened. In regards to sexual assaults, Barbara Hewson has repeatedly mentioned the hysteria caused by a book called The Courage to Heal, which told women that if they didn't have any specific memories of abuse, but felt that it might have happened, it probably had. This resulted in a wave of false memories and accusations against innocent parents. The book had not been written by psychologists or experts. It was written by two women taking a creative writing course. So when we say that the number of false accusations of rape are unknown, we're not just saying that some women are bitches. We're saying that some people might actually think something happened that never actually took place. That's why we want fair trials. That's why we want a dialogue about false rape accusations.
And there we go. That was Diana on false rape accusations and why we can't just automatically believe the alleged victim. I wanted to bring up a study that I saw a while back. It was published through, I believe, Fox News, and it showed that up to 20 or 25% of all men convicted of rape, and that's convicted, so they went through the criminal justice system, they served time, ended up being exonerated by DNA evidence. That is, they could not possibly have been the actual rapist. An additional, I think, 20% were also in a category of they couldn't tell if they'd been the rapist or not. So it was an undecided category. So almost 50% in DNA evidence did not show that the man who was charged with rape had actually done it. Now, in that situation, what was occurring was either sex hadn't taken place, so that the accuser was accusing a man who she hadn't actually had sex with, or she had misrepresented the identity of the person who she thought who had raped her. So in the 50 or 60% of cases where the DNA test positively identified the guy as her sexual partner, that didn't actually say that he raped her. It just positively identified that sex had taken place between them. So we're looking at a situation in which as much as 50% of convicted rapists are convicted on evidence that does not go beyond a shadow of a doubt that they even had sex with the woman who they are accused of raping. So there you go. And part of it is it's not a situation in which the woman is necessarily falsely accusing for a malicious reason. Sometimes she just misidentifies the person that she's accusing of rape. And rape may have actually happened, but we just don't know. So there's a case where we can't actually necessarily take an accuser's word, not because she's maliciously lying, but also because there's the potential of bearing false witness that she doesn't even know that she's doing. And I'll invite my co-host to join in on that.
One of the things that they're trying to do now is to have police lineups or photo arrays be administered by somebody who is not connected with the case at all and has no idea who the suspect is. Because they found that if the suspect is known to the officer who's conducting the witness lineup or the photo array, they will give subtle cues to the complainant that tells them who to pick.
Yeah, there's kind of an incentive for that.
There really is. I mean, like, the investigator wants to solve the case, and the investigator has a suspect, and the investigator wants the witness or the complainant to choose the suspect. So they will...
That's not even necessarily a conscious thing.
No, they'll give
a little out of context, but there was, years ago, and I cannot remember the name of it, but there was a horse that performed, and everybody thought the horse was doing math. And it was found later on that the owner of the horse was unconsciously giving the horse cues. So this is a normal, natural thing that people do. When you want a result from another person, your body language communicates that you want that result, even if you're not thinking, I want this person to know I want that result.
You know, this reminds me of a Law and Order episode where there was a severely autistic kid who they had sort of, he had, quote, learned to communicate through facilitated typing, right, where a facilitator would hold his hand and help him steady his hand so that he could type, right? And the mother had basically been trained in this, and when they actually showed this kid a flashcard with a flower or whatever, and said, you know, and not her, not the mother, and said, okay, so what is it? And couldn't do it, right? And all of the things, all of the communications this kid had supposedly made were all just in her imagination. They were all just wishful thinking. You know, and it's I would expect that's something that happens an awful lot, you know, with false memory syndrome, with all kinds of things, especially with witnessing violence based on gender. I mean, you know, you look at people witnessing a violent assault perpetrated by a woman, and within a couple of weeks, they're already downplaying it. Yeah. They're already remembering it as less violent than it was.
Well, there's a lot of problems with relying on eyewitness, which is why we can't have situations where we have a specific crime that allows just eyewitness. Just it's essentially he said, she said. Well, the problem is it's not even
that's pushing for.
Yeah, that's what they're we basically a charge of rape is essentially it's a guilty. It's a guilty verdict. A woman says, you raped me, and that's it, right?
Yeah, and you have the prosecutor who I think he was the one who convicted Charles Manson, Gary Bugliosi. He said something along the lines of, I would rather have a dog's footprints on the sidewalk than 10 witnesses saying they heard the dog bark at a certain time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not even a situation where you're saying that women are lying purposefully, because a lot of women probably are just misidentifying. But you cannot take a witness's word as gospel truth. It's not acceptable.
No,
it's not acceptable justice. I
want to give that a complainant, not a witness, not a defendant. Nobody's.
Okay,
I just want to point out one thing in the United States. Oops, sorry.
If you guys want to call in, the number is 310-388-9709. That's 310-388-9709. Please call in. And go ahead, Della.
All right. In the United States, there is a law that passed, I believe, last fall, that is going to make this required on campus. You know, I don't know if everybody remembers the discussion on the Dear Colleague letter that went out from the Department of Education requiring campus. Right, the Campus Sexual Violence Elimination Act, which they used the acronym SAVE for that, which I find kind of almost ironic. That is going to require that they make what essentially was in the Dear Colleague letter law. It's going to require all institutes of higher education participating in the Title IX program to include in their policies and procedures for handling sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, everything. They're going to be required to investigate every accusation. They're going to be required to have hearings. They're going to be required to use the preponderance of evidence standard instead of the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. And there's an article on A Voice for Men about that also that I've written called the Campus False Accuser Support Act that gives a little bit of an explanation and gives a link to the text. But what's basically going on there is that they're using colleges to attack the due process rights of men and boys accused of any kind of violence against women, but especially sexual violence. And it's kind of like a wedge, because if they can get this established, and it does go into effect in March, but if they can get this established on college campuses and create a sense of this as the norm, it'll make it a lot easier for them to get people to accept the idea, especially the younger generations who go through college with this as their norm, that this is the way the justice system should handle these cases as well.
Well, not only that,
there's every possibility that fallout from the dysfunction of this will backfire on them and cause exactly the opposite. But there's also every possibility that this could become how the justice system handles all violence against women cases.
Well, not only that, but if you decide to lower the burden of proof and erode due process in every single crime where men and women come into conflict, so domestic violence, sexual assault, all of those things, right, where even if men are only perceived to be coming into conflict with women, right, but in general it's parity, or it's as much giving as getting on either side, right? But if you can actually frame it as men and women in conflict, let's erode due process, let's put these men away, let's punish these men, blah, 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 let's make it easier to do so, right? All that does is, then you end up with a situation where, like, basically right now we have a situation where women are less likely for equivalent crimes. They're less likely to be arrested. They're less likely to be charged. They're more likely to be charged with lesser offenses. They're less likely to be brought to trial. They're less likely to be convicted. They're less likely to be sentenced to incarceration, and they serve shorter sentences. And then people say men are 95% of the people in prison, so of course we have to be tougher on men because they commit all the crimes.
People die in hospitals, so of course we should stay out of hospitals because hospitals are dangerous places.
Yeah, so it's literally this self-fulfilling prophecy where if you make it easier and easier and easier to convict men any time that there is any kind of conflict with a woman, right, then all you do is set the stage to say, look at how horrible men are. Look at how many men were kicked out of this university this year for crimes against women.
And
right? Oh, my goodness, how horrible are men?
Yeah. And with that, let's go to our first caller, Alvarez 15.
Hello?
Alvarez 15. Hi.
Hi. I have two questions. One, it does have to do with the topic, and two, well, I know you don't, it has more to do with feminism, but my first question is, Karen, I remember there was this video with you and Dean Esme in Toronto, and I think he talked about, he mentioned that he had a friend, a gay friend, who he was falsely accused of rape, and of course he didn't say the story because, it's, but... it
was just a chat, yeah.
I heard that it was, is it true, even if you're gay, you could be falsely accused of rape? Because I would think out of anything that could get a man out of it, it would be saying that, So.
Yeah, no, that doesn't necessarily work. I mean, how gay are you? Are you like 150% gay? do you barf at the sight of female genitalia? Like, are you going to, stand in front of a whole bunch of people and, with a woman rubbing up against you and literally there's no way you can avoid that charge. There's no way you can prove that you weren't really drunk one night and you made a bad decision and you decided, I'm going to see what it's like to be straight, right?
Wow.
Well, and there's also
there's really no
feminists say that men use rape.
You have a penis.
Yeah, well, they might say that.
That's like saying, oh, I accidentally shot her, right? Instead of on purpose. Like, what? Like, that's not a defense. It's you were careless with your penis.
Yeah, but the other thing is that they say that rape is a matter of, it's not a matter of sexual orientation, which there is some evidence to suggest that that's true. It really is about opportunity. So I don't think that you can say that you're gay as a defense against a rape charge. But what was your second thing that you were thinking of? Just like men in prison
can't say, I'm straight, so I didn't rape that other guy.
Okay, all right. So what was the second thing that you wanted to bring onto the floor here?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's more to do with feminism. Star Trek just recently came out with a video. He explained how feminism, at first, we don't have anyone like Gloria Steinem or Betty Friedan. It's become more of a, like Coca-Cola, like a cash, getting money kind of company. Because if you look at feminism and how they deny, women being perpetrators or false rape accusations as well, how they deny those, it's similar to how you would have, like, if you explained about the dangers of drinking Coca-Cola and how even there you would get death threats, just like you would with feminists if you were, butting in to them getting money. So is it true that it's much more like, I don't know how to explain it. It's how it became from like sort of a movement to more like, oh, let's get money and, let's talk about, how feminism is going to solve rape or domestic violence or this or that.
I would make the corollary. I would make the parallel to the Pink Ribbon campaign. It used to be about breast cancer, and now it's just about selling products. I think feminism is like that.
But on the other hand, I think that the adherents are just as entrenched in the ideology as they ever were. I mean, like when you have someone like Big Red shrieking patriarchy, 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 fuckface, like she literally believes that. She believes that. It doesn't matter whether it pays her. Right? Maybe what it pays her is the ability to be seen as an authority on something, as an expert on something, somebody who should be listened to, somebody who other people should defer to her opinion. Right? She's expounding. She's holding forth. Right? Which would explain the indignation when somebody interrupts her.
Yeah, the moral indignation. Well, thank you, Alvarez, for the call, and we're going to move to Jesse from New Zealand. Jesse from New Zealand. Hello.
I just when in New Zealand, in the University of Auckland, not only do we have those 3 girls that rhymed domesticated with castrated in their parody video of that pop singer, but there's
lovely.
Just a sec. What parody video are you talking about?
The Blurred Lines parody.
Yeah.
Sorry?
The Robin Thicke Blurred Lines parody.
Okay, so they took something where they were presumably, I'm guessing they presumably objectifying women, and then they were objectifying men, but they were like being really, really horribly dominating and humiliating to the men, unlike the actual Blurred Lines video. It's so funny.
With castrated, I just thought that was a bit, okay.
Emasculated, castrated, yeah.
Well, there's this academic from Auckland as well who does, I'm not sure what critical psychological theory is, but that's her field, and she's felt a little bit uncomfortable. This is, sorry for talking about feelings and all that stuff that but she said in one of her videos, one of her articles, that the University of Auckland promoted that there was almost like you have rape and you have violence against women, and that's on one side of the scale, and then you have stuff edging towards that scale, like a man being dominant in bed, or a sexually domineering husband. That's on the yellow, and then going out and raping a girl at knife point. That's on the red, but it's on the same scale. It's
it's all on the spectrum of normal male behavior within a patriarchal culture.
Right.
What I found
that
amazing,
was uncomfortable to read.
What I found amazing is that the Robin Thicke video that you were mentioning, right, Blurred Lines, that was a celebration of female sexuality. That was a celebration of even just the lyrics saying, I can tell how you're grabbing me, that you want me, I know you want me, come at me, make your move, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to stand back and let you make the next move, right?
So it was a celebration of female
go
sexuality.
on and make the move, right? And then the parody, the feminist parody, was all about humiliating and subjugating, like these guys in their underwear on, with collars around their necks on leashes, lying on their bellies with stiletto heels in their backs, having dildos forced into their mouths, talk about emasculation and castration. It was like a complete denigration of men and male sexuality.
Our media celebrated it as smart.
And I was just
smart.
like, how can you look at Robin Thicke's video as degrading to women? And then this parody video as empowering to women, when Robin Thicke's video was actually, in my opinion, it basically left all of the decision-making power in the hands of the woman. It was a celebration of what's sexually appealing in women, right? And then the parody was just like, let's treat men like dirt.
Can I read an extract from sexualpoliticsnow.nz?
How long is it?
It is less than a paragraph long.
Okay, go ahead.
It says here, if pornography shows women as people that exist to be fucked by men, often in aggressive ways, what would repeated exposure to this message and the pairing of it with sexual arousal do to men's expectations of sex and of women? Even if it didn't conjure rape-prone desires, and perhaps out of the blue, it seems naive to reject the possibility that the kind of porn might shape the sexual imagination in ways that lean towards, rather than away from, coercive sexuality.
Yeah, that's quite the quote, and I have to admit, whenever I hear this stuff from feminist research, I'm always struck that we have a group of people researching how male sexuality in and of itself degrades women. Like just existing, that the idea that men having sexual desire degrades women. But Della hasn't actually gotten a word in edgewise for the last 15 minutes. Did you have anything to add to that?
On the topic of the way porn is performed, this is not something that women get forced into. Women, for the most part, when we're talking about mainstream pornography, which seems to be, feminists don't seem to get as up in arms about any kind of underground or actual illegal pornography as they do mainstream, socially accepted, this is just porn, people watch it kind of porn. And these are not women who are forced to do this. These are not women who are disempowered. These are women who are very sexually empowered, who have made a choice to enjoy their sexuality and use their sexuality for profit on their own terms. And if you look at the industry, the superstars of the porn industry are women. The people who are the highest paid of the porn industry are women. The movers and shakers of the porn industry, the ones that kind of decide this is what belongs, this is what's going to happen in the industry, it's women. And then on the other end of that, you have lesbian porn, And then there's lesbian porn that is lesbian porn, and then there's lesbian porn that is for the major market. And the lesbian porn for the major market, when you look at that, that is also aggressive. And they will be more aggressive than the male porn stars. The female porn stars will actually, they're slapping each other, they're throwing each other down on the bed. This is not a situation of male dominance at all. It is probably the least male-dominated area that I can think of. And for feminists to turn around and treat it as a demonstration of male dominance and I guess a male dominance training camp for the public, simply because it shows men having sex with women and men desiring women and everything, is just utterly ridiculous.
They even look at the stuff that's amateur. The amateur porn, amateur porn is getting so popular, and I bet that they even look at that, and that's just normal people having sex, and that's somehow degrading, right?
Oh, you know what? I've heard feminists say that gay porn, right? Guy-on-guy porn supports the rape of women, right?
Okay,
I've heard them argue that. And, frankly, if you want to see some rough stuff, right, that's where you need to go, because guys are sturdy, right?
Yeah.
They're sturdy and they can take it, apparently, and.
And Jesse, sorry did you have anything else to add? You seem to be trying to speak. So I thought
I wanted to make. I'm sorry I did this without. I probably should have contacted you first, but I actually paraphrased, not changing any of the words, but just keeping the key sentences of your undemonizing of male sexuality post. I actually put it on a poster. I hope this is okay with you. I put it on a poster superimposed onto your logo, your avatar, and I posted it in the English faculty and in a few other faculties. I pinned it to the wall of a few faculties at my university.
Oh wow! Okay. I wonder how did you end up getting burned from that at all?
It was a bit of a. Well, I'm leaving that university. I'm actually going to Auckland next year, so I won't be there. So I don't really know.
It's a good time to do something like that, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that okay?
Why wouldn't it be okay?
Oh, just because it's your thing, and I didn't ask you.
Well, the reality is I put that stuff out there because I want people to read about it. I want people to learn about it, and I want people to think about these things in a different way. And if it gets disseminated, any way is fine. So thanks. Thank you for considering my words worth printing out, putting on a poster, and then hanging up in your university. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
But thank you for calling in, and I'm going to be moving to another caller. Please feel free to call in again. And thanks again for having my words resonate with you. Eric.
Hello.
Are you online? Hi.
Yes. Good night. Good evening. Hey, I wanted to talk tonight about the commonness and the new sort of surge in prevalence in some of the most damning of false rape allegations, especially, false child abuse allegations, allegations brought up in divorce court, things like that. And oftentimes it seems to me that the things that will hit home the most are personal stories. We can read all we want about statistical information, but it's the stories that are happening to our friends and loved ones that are actually what really drive these points home.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm real close to a family that have had both the males in the family accused of some of the most horrible crimes you can imagine, and they're both entirely innocent. One of them was in a dangerous divorce court situation with a woman with Munchausen by proxy syndrome.
Oh, God.
Yeah, really, really horrible. And she got custody of the kids.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that incredible?
I'm not actually surprised.
Munchausen by proxy is where you actually make your kids sick in order to get attention from doctors. So they've filmed mothers with this syndrome smothering their 2-year-olds in the emergency room just before they get called in to see the doctor.
Well, it's not unexpected.
So that their child is in acute distress when they see the doctor.
It's not unexpected that a woman like that would get custody. Why I'm afraid that I'm no longer surprised at this anymore. But continue with your story, Eric.
Yeah.
Well, what's so dangerous about these kind of thought processes when they end up in popular culture, that men could never be the sole provider and custodian of care of their children, it automatically goes to the mother, even if she's not only crazy but has been independently judged with that pathology ordered by the court. So I guess the thing that I really wanted to talk about was once these stories hit home and you start bringing them up to people, everybody seems to have a story. And it's really kind of surprising to me. Everybody has a hidden story, a friend, a close friend, a brother, an uncle. And there's got to be something about the prevalence of these things and the growth of these false accusations. Is it that people are finding that it works, and that lizard part of their brain that shows that they get more stuff and they get to right perceived wrongs through this action? I don't ever remember hearing about this stuff 20 years ago in the manner that I'm hearing about it now. And I'm wondering if that growth is because it's more acceptable.
It's more enabled in the court system.
I would throw in another possibility. Della, you said it was more enabled. It's possible.
Yeah, it is more enabled in the court system right now.
That we're not just looking at. I would disagree with the caveat. I think what we're looking at now is there's actually more ability for people to tell their stories of this. You're right. It may be more enabled, but I think it may also be that there's just more access to the ability to talk about it now.
I think it's a combination.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure false rape accusations were a problem 150 years ago.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think so. I think that there have been a couple of sort of witch hunts that have discredited a lot of that have jaded the public. The one in Saskatchewan, in particular, with the daycares. I forget what that was. The name of that scandal was, but I mean, you literally had kids saying that their daycare providers, by the end of all the questioning, all of the leading questions by investigators and counselors, saying that their daycare providers were flying around the room on broomsticks and levitating and eating babies and, all kinds of insane stuff like that could never possibly happen. And 100 people were charged in that case, and there were hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages awarded to the people who were unjustly accused. Right? So you have a few cases where you have this hysteria that has led to people being a little bit more careful. I've noticed in the UK you see a lot of the sort of mainstream newspapers covering stories of women going to jail for making a false rape allegation. In the UK, you see way more of those coming out of the UK than you do out of the US in mainstream papers, right? Because for whatever reason, the UK is now actually taking action against that kind of bullshit, right? Maybe they had just so many of them that they figured, we have to actually start prosecuting them. Maybe they just had a rash of them. I think that probably false accusations of rape are like false accusations of witchcraft. They go up and down from year to year. I think Salem probably had some peaks and valleys in that regard, right, from year to year.
It's a seasonal thing.
Or it's like you get there's hysterias like the one with the satanic child abuse scandal in Saskatchewan, and then all of a sudden you had people with recovered memories of being satanically abused as children, and all of this bullshit that was in the early 90s, I think, late 80s, early 90s. And
just to add something to that, it is a situation where it could also be that, I mean, prior to the internet, prior to like the ability to do these sort of amateur radio shows, we really couldn't have people call in and say, oh, so you've experienced these many people in your family have a false accusation. And then somebody, on the internet, people could come together and start collating this and saying, hey, it's not just that I seem to have a lot of false accusers in my general area, but this seems to be happening all over the place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments did a survey on false accusations, and they found that 1 out of 10 Americans had been falsely accused of a major crime like rape, child abuse, domestic violence. And 90% of them were men, and 90% of them were accused by a woman.
Yeah. Get into the situation of false accusations of child abuse. That's one of the major tools, at least in the United States. That's one of the major tools in a divorcing wife's arsenal. Is that she will accuse the divorcing husband of some level of abuse against the children in order to try to reduce any visitation, any kind of association the court is going to allow him to have with the children. And even in cases where there's really no way for her to do that, in cases where there's, the guy is so upstanding and so obviously not abusive that it's just going to look ridiculous when she does it, women will come up with something.
But they'll talk about they come up with it. It's not even that they come up with it. They have a whole plethora of people encouraging them to do it.
Yes.
They have legal aid attorneys. They have social workers. They have all kinds of people saying, all you have to do is make an allegation.
And their friends.
Did you ever think that he might have been abusing the children?
No.
See, that speaks really loudly to what I brought up. What Karen just said speaks really loudly to what I was bringing up, because there's an entire web of concern and institutional situations that people can benefit from. In the case of somebody with a Munchausen syndrome, they love the attention. They love the attention of people in positions of power. And so when there's institutional benefits that come from them, that will maybe even exacerbate false allegations because of the attention it brings to them.
Oh God! And you look at it like me. When I split up with my husband, my ex-husband, I wasn't going to kick him out. Why are you going to spend money on a hotel room? That's a huge waste of money. I'll sleep on the couch. You sleep in the bedroom till you find a place. It's all good, right? Stay as long as you need. And I phoned my mom and my best friend, and I let them know that I was splitting with my husband, and both of them said, is he still in the house? And I'm like, yeah. And both of them said, do you feel like you're safe? And I was like, well, now I don't. Why would you even ask that? I felt fine until you asked that. What's wrong with you?
Feel afraid. You wouldn't think, and that's just it. Other people will insinuate that fear into you, based on kind of ridiculousness.
Yeah, no, and I was just like, I was fine letting him stay there. Then they, all of a sudden, they're like, are you okay? Do you feel safe? And I'm like, should I not feel safe? Ew, oh my goodness.
I remember a while back, this does connect, but it when I realized, because I did a lot of research into the statistics regarding sexual abuse, and when I realized that there was a high rate of having been sexually abused in the history of guys who went on to abuse, not that all boys or girls who are abused go on to become abusers, but there is a high rate of that in the history of those that do. I remember that there was a weight of fear that lifted off my shoulders that I never realized was there until it was gone. And I think it's that kind of insinuation of like a lack of humanity in men, and this insinuation that they're just almost just like randomly violent. And when you realize that there's sort of a history. There's a reason, there's a history, you're part of a cycle. It takes your weight off. And I don't think that knowledge made me any safer, but it made me feel a lot safer for whatever reason. But Eric, did you have anything that you wanted to add to what you've said so far?
No, that was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to those anecdotes.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for telling us. And I hope you call in again.
I will do so. Thank
you. We have Nick on the line. Nick from Men's Rights Edmonton, who wants to tell you that there's an activism opportunity that you can engage in.
Oh, does it involve tuna casserole?
It does. It does, Karen.
It does? Tuna casserole!
Yeah, if I just called in, I'm just on lunch break at work here, but if anybody wants to help out with what we're doing here in Edmonton, I'm pretty sure everybody knows that there was one of the dumbest videos again ever made in the history of YouTube in regards to Men's Rights Edmonton. We thought after Ryan Vanderhook it couldn't get any. Yeah, we thought after Ryan Vanderhook it couldn't get any dumber, but these guys came along and proved us wrong.
Yeah, no, and, they actually took the brick of logic and inserted it up their bums.
Yeah.
Is that why you looked so good?
Yeah, they probably liked it.
I think they did. They kind of had that kind of glazed look over their faces, like I have a brick of logic up my bum kind of look.
That's actually a much nicer explanation than they don't have any brains. Like maybe they're actually in some sort of sexual ecstasy, which I don't know. I guess that makes the attack of the feminist zombies.
Allison, for shame.
But one of the guys was a sociologist and instructor at the University of Alberta and Red Deer College by the name of Barrett Weber, and he's the second faculty member at the University of Alberta who we have caught with their pants on fire in regards to Men's Rights Edmonton. But it's not just lying, because what the things that they say are so obviously untrue that they indicate just not even knowing what the fuck they're talking about. And these people are, if there's anybody in society who should know what they're talking about before they go and talk about it, it should be a post-secondary educator. And especially since we are a social movement and this guy is a sociologist and he didn't know anything about us. So if you go to Karen's channel... Sorry?
He should know everything about us.
Karen,
yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, if you go to Karen's YouTube channel or a Voice for Men website, you should see a video about Barrett Weber being anti-Semitic. And I would appreciate it if everybody would watch the video if they haven't already, email it to a few academics at the U of A and Red Deer College, because I think the more people who email this message to the more academics, then the better a chance it has of getting some real attention. So. And
Nick, just before you go, what is the basic premise behind the video?
Well, it's that if they can call us misogynists and say that what we're saying is full of hate without any evidence, without any justification, well, then hell, I can call them anti-Semites or Satanists or child-abusing heroin addicts, and I don't have to provide any evidence either. I mean, right? You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Actually, one commenter on the video said I could almost see him about to explode and start, screaming anti-Jewish epithets and I was like, I could totally see it too.
Yeah, we just know these things.
We just know it. It's intuitive. You don't have to listen to what he's saying.
In a culture where an accusation is the evidence, then we can just say whatever we want about them.
Oh God,
yeah, it's true.
True. You're right. Accusation is evidence.
I think he's probably Islamophobic as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's Islamophobic?
Oh, I think so. I think Weber is not only anti-Semitic, but he's Islamophobic. And
he eats babies.
I think he does eat babies, actually. So.
Okay, but once again, let's get that channel where you can see this the video.
That's on Karen Strawn's YouTube channel.
That would be on my channel, and yeah.
All right.
Karen Strawn, okay. Straughan.
Right. Have a good night, guys.
All right. Yes, thanks, Nick. Well, we're about at that time again of the night. Time to say goodbye to our listeners and our callers, and I guess me with my co-hosts and everybody else who makes this show possible. We want to do a round robin before we leave. Della and Karen, final thoughts?
Della, go ahead.
Sure. Well, one thing I would point out, I would want to go back to that moment. I think it was Eric brought up that everybody has a story, and it's something that personally I have moved around Ohio quite a bit. I've lived in 4 different counties, and there has not been a single one of those counties in which I have not seen false allegations given credence in the court system without evidence. And this problem is at least widespread enough that there are 4 different counties in Ohio that I can honestly say, I've seen this happen. And I'm specifically talking about domestic violence and sexual violence allegations. So, I don't know, just in that one little area and just in one person's life having witnessed repeated accusation, and it's been each time, it's been women making accusations against men. So this is a widespread problem. It isn't just when you have a story like that in your life, you have to realize it's not just happening to you. And this is something that people do need to talk about and do need to be sharing and starting to discuss why is this happening and what can we do about it.
Well, one of the things too that I think is that you really can't. I really can't stress enough that it doesn't actually need to be an allegation made to police. Honestly, I know 2 men who have been falsely accused of rape. Unofficially, just casually, to peer groups who they've lost friends, they have ended up losing their jobs, they've ended up having to move. They have to get away from the allegation because they never feel like there aren't people staring at them and talking about them and talking about how horrible a person they are and like trying to decide, are we going to jump this guy today or are we going to do it tomorrow? And then with false allegations of domestic violence, you don't even need to make an allegation of domestic violence for there to be a false allegation of domestic violence. The police will make it for you. Like my ex-husband, his girlfriend, between his ex-wife and me, was an extremely violent woman, and she stalked him when I was first starting to see him. But the first night, they lived on 4.1 wooded acres, and their neighbors called the police because they could hear her screaming at him.
Wow. And
the police came, and he was covered in his own blood. And he's on the ground on his front with the cop's knee in his back and the cuffs on. And it wasn't until he had convinced them that her 2 children were hiding in the closet while she was still inside screaming and smashing things that they let him up and took her away instead and took her kids into care. right?
It was okay for him to be battered, but
if there were no kids in the house, they would have taken it.
Yeah, there's too many stories like this to just keep burying your head in the sand and say that it doesn't happen and it's not a problem. And it really gets to the point where you wonder how many stories does there have to be of this stuff happening before certain ideologues actually acknowledge that this problem exists. I mean, it's like unbelievable. You go to, for example, Men's Rights Reddit, and it's like a wash of these endless stories. It's actually a triumph when a guy who's bleeding, you know, he's staggering around, he's bleeding, he's cut open, and he doesn't get arrested.
Yeah.
And the woman with the bloody knife, you know, and she's practically pulling it out as the police car arrives, and they're like, did he hurt you?
Yeah. You know, and the one thing, like my ex was no peach to live with, right? He was no peach to live with, but he never once ever laid a hand on me in 15 years, right? And he still, when I was first with him, he still had scars on his arms from defensive wounds.
And it's how much do men have to endure? And in turn, how much they have to endure of not only not having their victimization taken seriously, but also being victimized by these toxic serial or commercial victim risks. What the heck do you call them? False accusers, right? These con jobs, like these
fake victims.
These aggressive
con artists
who don't care if they ruin lives. Like, at what point do we say enough is enough and start pointing to this phenomenon as something as actually indicative of a problem in our greater society, that we
start admitting that an accusation is a weapon.
Yeah.
It has to stop being profitable before anybody will be willing to do anything about it. Because at this point, the victim advocacy industry, and it is an industry, does profit from false accusations. And as long as they do profit from false accusations, and there's no oversight on that, nobody comes along and if, say, Artemis House of Dayton decides to support a false accuser for 7 years while she continually attacks her victim, after they've had definitive proof that she's lying, nobody comes along and says, well, you can't receive federal funds and do that.
Yeah.
No, there's no accountability.
Says you're responsible.
There's no accountability. This is socially approved. It's socially funded. When do we start saying that we actually do live in a rape culture? We live in a social rape culture. Social rape of men. It's not just acceptable. It's promoted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that we don't want to promote the idea of we live in a rape culture, but
well, we live in some kind of culture. I think Barbara Kay said, be it resolved that we live in a culture of misandry.
Yeah. Be it resolved that we live in a culture where men's well-being can be sacrificed for a few shekels, a few more extra dollars, and nobody bats an eye.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're at the end of the show, and hopefully we've aggravated our opponents in the gender sphere enough for the night. Maybe we've caused a few hernias and a few strokes. So it's time to call it a night. Thank you to the listeners for listening in. Thank you for our callers for calling in and giving us your input and your insights. And as always, thank you to James for helping us out, helping us produce this show. Thank you for AVFM for hosting it. Thank you to Europaphonics for always making the incredible art that he does, and to Phil for doing the animation. And that's about it. Good night.
This is Honey Badger Radio, reminding you to take the red pill.